Hi, dear Toastmasters, guests, and friends. Welcome to Toastmasters, the world's biggest platform to hone your leadership skills and communication skills. We are District 31. I am Veera Shriram, your public relations manager, and I welcome you to Open Heart with District 31. On our talk show today, we have a Toastmaster who loves music. They play piano and incorporate music in their speeches. I've never heard a speech with musical instruments. So I'm so excited to have this Toastmaster on our talk show. Toastmaster, who's a member of Ocean State Toastmasters Club. Toastmaster Club with a lot of stalwarts in the club. A Toastmaster is a software engineer at Capital One Online Banking. Excellent bank for you all to bank. On that note, let me welcome Toastmaster Ben onto our talk show. Toastmaster Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Vera.
Thank you for coming on our talk show. Toastmaster Ben, I ask all my guests this one question. Your Toastmasters journey. Where did it start? How did it start? Will it share something about that?
Certainly. So, as you mentioned, I'm a musician, and growing up, I always suffered from severe stage fright. I think a lot of us suffer from that starting out. And I would always get very nervous. My hands would shake when I would come to give a piano recital for people. And one of the things that my father recommended I do to help out with the nervousness was talk to my audience a little bit before I would play the piano, tell them a little bit about the music or the history behind the composers, that sort of thing. So I wasn't completely new to public speaking when I began Toastmasters, but it was something that I had a lot of room to grow with. I remember during college, there was this one episode that is stuck in my head. It seared into my brain where I decided to give a class presentation on some topic, and about 20 seconds into the speech, I just completely blanked. And I stood there in front of the whole class like a deer in the headlights and could not remember what I meant to say. So I knew something had to change after that, but I slowly got better at it. And then one of the things that I used to do as a musician and still do occasionally is collect local musicians, some students, some professionals, some amateurs, to do an ensemble project. And one on one of these occasions in 2015, one of the musicians that I recruited, who's a friend of a friend of a friend, that sort of thing, turned out to be a member of Ocean State Toastmasters. And after the project was over, she mentioned that she was part of this thing that where people get together and practice public speaking. And it sounded like something that might be fun to try out. So I joined, and I've been a member of that club for 7 going on 8 years. I should mention that my mother says that she had previously tried to convince me to join Toastmasters, and I have no recollection of her trying to convince me of this, but there's a lot of things she told me that I don't remember, so it's quite plausible.
Congratulations on 7 years, Toastmaster Ben. That's a long career at Toastmasters. Keeps you at Toastmaster? What keeps you going, coming back to Ocean State every single week and giving a speech, or what motivates you?
Well, first of all, I should say I don't make it every single week, or, well, we meet twice a week, but or, sorry, not twice a week, every 2 weeks. But I definitely don't make every single meeting. I come when I can, when I have the free time, which is not too often. But as to why, there's this story about the famous cellist Pablo Casals. He was asked at the age of 80 or so why he keeps practicing 5 hours a day. And his response is classic. He said something like, I think I'm making progress. And that's the kind of attitude that I think we all should bring to something like Toastmasters, because we never stop being students, or we should never stop being students. There's always something to learn, always some area in which we can grow. And definitely as new people join the club and I learn something from them, it's always been a fun experience.
That's so profound, Toastmaster Ben, when you think about you are always learning, trying to make progress every single meeting. Thank you for sharing that, Toastmaster Ben. Toastmaster Ben, shifting gears to a second segment is the impact of Toastmasters on your personal life, professional life, social life, spiritual life. Would you like to share one or two stories, the impact of Toastmasters on any of your life?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any one particular story that stands out, but I do know that it's helped me even just carrying on conversations in day-to-day life. I've always been a total introvert, and it's helped me strike up a conversation with strangers or just uh, friends at parties, that sort of thing. And then, of course, when we were all stuck at home for a couple of years, Toastmasters was one of those few outlets where we still kept meeting on Zoom, and it gave me a little bit of an outlet, so I didn't completely lose track of how you interact with people. As far as professional life, it's definitely helped me in job interviews that I've been able to at least keep going on the spot when I might have otherwise gone completely blank. And I've also joined various boards of organizations over the years, especially musical organizations. And it's helped me uh, not run the meeting, but keep the meeting going or facilitate a discussion or lay out how I think something ought to be done so that other members of the board can understand it. So it's been really great in that regard.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Toastmaster Ben. Behind you, I see a beautiful piano, and and I hear that you incorporate music into your speeches. Would you like to show our audience how you do that, Toastmaster Ben?
Sure, one time that I did, I've now done about four different icebreakers, I guess, and on one occasion, I sort of punctuated my introduction of myself with little snippets of music. One thing that I said was, oh, how did it go? I just mentioned offhand that I liked playing, or I liked watching uh, certain movies. Or no, this is what it was. I mentioned that I liked building models of spaceships.
Okay.
There's just one of the many hobbies that I do in my spare time. And then for just 5 seconds, I turned to the piano and started playing some Star Wars music. And and then jumped back to my speech. And I would stick in little snippets of music that I thought would illustrate or just highlight some of the things I was mentioning.
Star Wars are amazing. I enjoyed. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and you made my day. Toastmaster Ben, that was a beautiful thing. Thank you for playing that for
I
us.
hope this show doesn't get copyright striked now that I've stuck that in there.
Absolutely, we'll make sure that is protected there. Toastmaster Ben, what would you say one or two reasons for our guests watching this show? Why should they consider Toastmasters? In your view, what are the one or two reasons why should someone join Toastmasters?
Because it's fun. Next question. No, no, seriously. There are things in life that you do because not necessarily they're fun. In fact, they might be unpleasant, like your parents tell you to eat your vegetables, that sort of thing. And then there are things where they aren't exactly pleasant, but they're satisfying once you get going. That's how I feel about lifting weights, for example. And then there are things that are just fun. And even for someone like myself who is naturally an introvert and doesn't really want to have to talk to people, I mean, what could be more fun than you're basically in a room with a small group of friends, maybe half of whom were totally petrified when they started Toastmasters as well, and you get to talk about anything you want. You don't have to talk about some boring subject for a corporate meeting or whatever. You can talk about spaceships or Bitcoin or blowing your nose or anything that you think would be an interesting topic. I I think it's fun, and I think a lot of people who are still scared off by the concept of it should give it a try.
Absolutely. It's a fun organization, and we all come to have some fun table topics on impromptu speaking, as you rightly alluded. Toastmaster Ben, I'll ask you a question. Have you heard about Udly?
I haven't. Tell me about it.
Udly is an artificial intelligence tool available for every single Toastmasters to practice their speeches. You give your speeches, and it can detect the outcomes, your clutch words and it can give you a report. Having known a little bit of what Udly does and having known what Toastmaster is, would you like to give a table topic for 1 minute on Udly?
Sure, right now you mean?
Yeah, right now.
Certainly. So from what you have told me, Udly sounds like a really interesting tool to practice at home. It's something that allows you to work out some of the fluff that might be in your speaking without having to pull in another person. Are there uh, are there upsides or downsides? Well, the upside is it's very convenient, and it might you could practice just about any time that you have a free moment. You could practice it in the bathroom, or you're walking around it outside, as long as the neighbors don't look at you too oddly. Why are you speaking into this phone? And you keep backing up and removing filler words. And I would certainly give it a try if I had a mobile device that I was willing to install it on, except I don't have a smartphone. This is my phone. But that's just me. For those of you who have a mobile device, or a smart device, by all means give it a try. Is there a downside? I don't know. Sometimes I feel that if you use these sort of artificial intelligence tools a little too much and you don't give it a try in front of real people and see how real people respond, then you run the risk of becoming a little bit too stale in your delivery. So I would say, use it wisely, like any technological tool.
Round of applause, Toastmaster Ben. This is exactly what table topic is. Toastmaster Ben did a fabulous job. He didn't know a lot about Udly, but he created a speech. Dear Toastmasters, that is what we come here to practice every week, impromptu speaking, which is very important in our life. And Toastmaster Ben had done a fabulous job demonstrating Udly. Toastmaster Ben,
Thank you.
now we move on to a final round, which is a rapid fire round. Are you ready for some fun?
Shoot.
A historic leader that inspires you a lot, Toastmaster Ben.
Historic leader. Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, there are statesmen that I definitely admire or appreciate, like Teddy Roosevelt, Churchill, people like that. But my personal heroes tend to be not so much world leaders or captains of industry or people like that. They tend to be more creative types and thinking people who, by the example of their work, inspired people that came after them. And I guess I'll give a shout out to two in particular. One of them is, in fact, on the wall behind me. That is Franz Liszt. He is one of the greatest composers who ever lived, and he is widely credited with having invented the piano recital as we know it today and piano technique, modern piano technique anyway. But one of the things I find really striking about his career and relevant to us in Toastmasters is that in his late 30s, he was at the height of his fame, height of his career. He just abruptly quit. And his attitude was, I've proven myself. And he spent the second half of his life, a very large part of it, promoting other musicians and teaching. And I think that's just about the greatest career anyone can have. You're a trailblazer, you do something that no one's done before, and then it's not just a matter of leaving the field open for the next generation, it's actively helping the next generation. And he was such a generous person and big-hearted. So Franz Liszt is one of my favorite people. He's my artistic musical hero, I guess, and the other person I'd mention is Richard Feynman, who is my science hero. And there's just something wonderful about his attitude toward life and always exploring and always trying to understand better the world around him. And one of the things I like about him is that he was just an extraordinary communicator in popularizing science. And he had this wonderful way of communicating really interesting scientific subjects in a way that was accessible to a broad audience, and yet he did it without dumbing it down or talking down to people. And that's a very delicate balance and one I think we should all strive for. So those are my two heroes.
Thank you for sharing that, Toastmaster Ben. A historic speech that is very close to your heart.
Historic speech. That again is tough. I will say Lately, I've had the misfortune of having heard a good number of corporate speeches that were kind of long and full of fluff and hype and buzzwords, that kind of thing. And when I feel like I have to clear my mind after listening to those, I go and read the Gettysburg Address. It's short and pithy and powerful and to the point. And I mean, what's so hilarious is that it wasn't even the featured speech for that day. There was another speaker who talked for 2 hours before Lincoln, and no one remembers his speech. And maybe this just says something about our short attention spans nowadays. I do think there's room for longer form speeches, and I appreciate, say, Churchill's wartime speeches, Martin Luther King's address, but I have to give it to Lincoln. I appreciate the brevity.
Thank you. Great choice, Toastmaster Ben. Your personal speech, Toastmaster Ben, when you written it, when you practiced it, when you delivered it, when you got the feedback, you felt you did the best job. Any speech that comes to mind?
Oh my. I don't know if there's one in particular that stands out from Toastmasters. I do know I recently joined the Gatsby Days Committee, which is this group pretty close to where I live, and we put on some events once a year that kind of are built around commemorating the burning of the Gatsby that happened in 1772 here in Rhode Island. And when I went to the meeting to see if they would let me join, and I had sent in my application, they asked me to just stand up and introduce myself. And I managed to give a talk that, just an off-the-cuff sort of cross between an icebreaker and showing my appreciation for the events that they put on, that I don't think they were expecting that much of an address from anyone coming in. And I don't think I went on for too long. I definitely didn't. I didn't go past whatever Lincoln said, but I did manage to work in some personal touches and some humor, and it was very well received, and they welcomed me with open arms. So that was very satisfying.
Thank you for sharing that, Toastmaster Ben. A book that you like to recommend to our audience? Any book that comes to your mind?
Book. There's a lot of good books. It's hard to make a choice. I'd have to say one of my favorite works of literature of all time, if you can count this as literature, it's literature, is The Iliad by Homer. And it's just this amazing, sprawling work of mythology and very interesting and very human characters. Both the gods and the humans have very human personalities. And there are a lot of very interesting speeches that go on in that book. Most notably, the one that comes to mind is this exchange between, I think it's Odysseus and Achilles, where Odysseus is trying to convince Achilles, stop sulking and come back and fight, we need you. And Achilles says, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with this. Agamemnon's brought this on himself, and he's going to suffer. And the speeches involved there are just wonderfully well done. I mean, obviously they've been highly dramatized to work in this sort of poetry recitation setting, but they're great examples of Greek eloquence. So I would highly recommend the whole thing. It's a wonderful work.
Great choice. Thank you for sharing that, Toastmaster Ben. A food that is very close to your palate? Any food?
If you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, I would have said probably brownies, fresh pasta, plain pasta, fresh bread, a lot of carb, a lot of sweet. Sometime between then and now, I don't know what's been going on with my body, but I find that I can't take the gluten so much anymore, and certainly not as much sugar as I used to. And if I'm going to sit down for a nice meal, I'm probably going to pick something like salmon, baked potatoes, kale or green beans, just some very basic, not too processed foods, and no dessert, and a nice cup of hot tea.
Amazing choice.
That's my food of choice.
Good choice. A restaurant that you like to visit with friends and family to have a good time? Any restaurant that you like to visit?
I haven't been out to too many restaurants lately. If I'm on the run and having to pick up food from somewhere, I'll usually grab it from a place like Chipotle. There, I like the buffet of pick a little of this and that here and there and stuff it into a bowl. But if I'm going to take some friends to a nice restaurant, well, there's actually a nice restaurant up in Pawtucket. It's an Indian restaurant. I don't know if you've been there. It's called Rasoi,
Sorry.
and a friend and I are going there tomorrow, actually. So I've been there for dinner before, never been there for lunch, but they've got good stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy a nice meal, Toastmaster Ben. Finally, would you like to play a nice composition for our audience watching the show, Toastmaster Ben?
Uh, sure. I'll try to keep this very brief.
Yep.
But here's an excerpt from something that I'm going to be playing at a piano recital at the end of next month.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks a lot, Toastmaster Ben. That was beautiful. Thank you for playing that for us. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our Toastmasters that have not yet asked?
Well, two things, I guess. One, you should follow me online. My website is bennacar.com, and my YouTube channel is In Search of the Muses, and I post videos there regularly that are, some of it is me playing the piano, and some of it is just talking about stuff at the keyboard. And I also post on my website announcements about upcoming recitals, so you should follow that. And for all of you out there and just getting along in your Toastmasters journey, I would just say keep at it and try new things, and you'll never know where it's going to take you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Ben. You could have been anywhere in the world. You choose to come down and talk to us. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
The Toastmasters, that was Toastmaster Ben sharing his beautiful journey of Toastmasters and his passion for music. Please do subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on his website. Please do also like and share to our YouTube channel. Your encouragement will encourage me and Toastmaster Ben to create more content for you and entertain you. On that note, have a wonderful spring and talk to you on our next episode of Open Heart with D31. Are you coming to CLCon 2023? Please register. It's our annual conference and we'll have all fun. Bye-bye.